So I realized Jesus could not have been crucified. So I started asking now these questions, and of course I was quickly removed as the youth pastor. No longer was I able to even speak in public anymore, which I didn't want to anyway, because I could not continue to preach a message that I did not believe in. And finally, my friend Benjamin, when I told him what I was saying, he smiled, and he said, come with me. He took me to his textual critic professor. And his textual critic professor told me, Joshua, the book you have in your hand, the Bible, is a book written by the hands of men and women over thousands of years, and it's been passed down by hand, written for thousands of years, and people made lots of mistakes in their copying. Sometimes the mistakes were accidental, sometimes they were purposely changed for many various reasons. He said, but what you have in your hands now is a product of the hands of men and women, and they left their fingerprints on it. So it's not without error, it's not perfect. No, it's not. He said, but the people who believe in it by faith. And it is that faith which takes them to justification and salvation. It is that faith which leads them to have salvation, because true faith is what? Belief beyond the capability to understand. Belief beyond the capability of reason. Even belief in the face of blatant evidence. And so I said to him, let me tell you something. I said, what you tell me is a bunch of garbage. I said, because God is perfect. Yeah? He said, yes. I said, therefore, God's book should be perfect. Therefore, God's prophets should be perfect. God's message should be perfect. And everything that comes from him is perfect. His universe that he created is perfect. You're telling me God is perfect, the world he created is perfect, the system he set up is perfect, the human being that he developed is perfect, but now all of a sudden when it comes to his message to human beings to live their life, now all of a sudden it's completely imperfect. His prophets are worse than more people I've ever met in my entire life. His book is rubbish. It has no authority, no whatsoever. The religion is so stupid that the only way you can believe in it is if you turn off your logic that God gave you as a sense to understand the world around you, and that's the only way I can be saved. He's like, yep. I said, well, this is not the religion for me. And I left. I left Christianity completely. I said, this is garbage. And I started to look for other religions. I studied Hinduism. That's like a soap opera of gods. Seriously, it's like a soap opera. One god gives birth to another god who then turns and kills his mother, and he sleeps with his sister. And oh, by the way, this week another god, we found one that, there's another one that this, and man, this is just craziness. So, and I also read a book about Islam. I got a book from the public library about Islam. I don't remember the name of it. But it said that Muslims, M-O-S-L-E-M, which is a very derogatory word, it means someone who oppresses someone else. Coming from the word dhulam, Muslim, means one who commits dhulam, which is oppression or wrong or harm or evil. It's a very slight of the tongue. It said that Muslims worship a moon god called Allah, who lives in a box in the desert of Saudi Arabia, and that all Muslims were Arabs, and they had many wives, and they beat them all day long, and that the greatest deed of a Muslim was to kill a non-Muslim at any time, at any place, without discretion, and then they would get virgins when they went to heaven. So I put that book back on the shelf, and I marked Islam off the list like this, and I said to myself, if I ever accept another religion, it'll never be Islam, and if I ever see a Muslim, I'm going to Bruce Lee him on the streets, and I'm going to call the FBI. That's it. One day, I was sitting at a friend's house who was a Muslim. I didn't know. I knew him for a couple of years, and I never knew he was a Muslim. We were at his house and talking about religion. And my friend and me were debating about religion, and I didn't know this guy was a Muslim for two reasons. Number one, he was an African American, and I thought Muslims were Arabs. And number two, I didn't know that Muslims, along with their worshiping their moon god in the box and killing non-Muslims and beating their wives, I didn't know they could sell drugs. That's what this guy did as a profession. He was like, no, seriously, I'm a Muslim. I'm like, you're black, man. You know what I mean? He's like, you think I don't know that? I was like, you can't be a Muslim, they're Arabs. He's like, what were you talking about? So I told him what I knew about Islam. He was like, man, what in the world? Whatever you read, this is the biggest garbage I've ever seen. He said, Islam is the complete opposite of that. So I told him, I was like, all right, tell me about Islam. He said, I can't because I'm not the best Muslim. I said, I can't. He said, I barely pray 5 times a day like I'm supposed to. I don't do the best that I should. He said, but I do know where you can go to find out about Islam. I was like, where? He's like, come with me on Friday to the mosque for Jummah. I'm like, okay, the only thing I understood out of that sentence was Friday. that's it. So after the prayer, the imam came to me. You know how we do our dawah, the 5 pillars of Islam, or this, the 6 beliefs, or that. I'm like, look, buddy, I don't mean to be mean, but there's nothing you can tell me that's going to make me believe in your religion, because I've heard it all before. I've heard everybody's little spiel about what their religion is about, and I'm not going to, nothing you could say can make me believe. I was a little bit arrogant, but I said, but I want to ask you something. Do you have proof? Is there proof? Because my grandfather taught me when I was a kid, and I've used this ever since then. He said to me, young man, the truth always comes with proof. Therefore, if somebody tells you they're telling you the truth, ask them for some proof. So I said, do you have proof? Do you have something you can put right here in my hand to tell me what your religion is? And he smiled. He said, come with me. He took me to his office. He reached on the shelf, and he pulled off a book, and he put it in my hands. And I looked at it, and it said, the Holy Quran. He said, this is our book from God. And he started telling me, the Prophet Muhammad was revealed this book. He said, look here, you don't need to tell me anything. If your book is what you say it is, it'll say it all by itself. So I took the Quran home and I started reading it. I started reading the Surah Al-Fatiha, reminded me of the Lord's Prayer. What caught my attention more than anything, and what really, really made me read the book, was the 2nd verse of the 2nd chapter. The 2nd verse of the 2nd chapter told me that this is the book that has no doubt in it, no discrepancies, because I was reading the Noble with the little commentary, no discrepancies, no contradictions, no distortions, and it is a guidance for those who fear God. I was like, are you serious? Really? You think so? That was a challenge to me, because I found doubt in every book. I found contradictions in every book. I found discrepancies in every book. I said, I'll find it in this book. So the reason I read the Quran initially was to find fault with it. So I started reading it, Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Imran, Surah Al-Nisa, and I started to notice names like Abraham, Noah, Lot, Moses, David, Zechariah, John the Baptist, Jesus. All of these names I started to read, but there was a difference. The stories in this book were of people who were at the highest level of morality. They not only preached the message, they lived the message. They were the most perfect human beings to walk the face of the planet. They were people who you could look at and emulate them to live a life pleasing to God. And the only thing I could say to myself was, these are prophets. These are God's prophets. And then I kept saying in the book that if you're in doubt about this revelation, then find contradiction in it. If you're in doubt about it, then make something like it. And I'm saying to myself, wow, this is heavy. This is the heaviest stuff I've ever seen in any book. And I'm starting to see over and over. And finally, I could not put the book down. When I read the nativity story of how Jesus was born and Jesus' life, there were 3 chapters of the Quran, Surah Ali Imran, Surah Isra, and Surah Maryam, that answered every question I ever had about Jesus. By the time I put the book down, Sunday, 3 days, I was addicted to this book. By the time I turned chapter 114 of the Quran, it was late at night in my room at home, and I remember I was in tears, because the only thing I could say to myself was, this is the book that has no doubt in it, and is a guidance for those who fear God. And I said to myself, that day I want to be a Muslim. I don't care what these people are, I don't know anything else about them except this book. If they follow this book, then I want to be like them. So on Monday I went back to the masjid, it was locked. So I found the imam, somebody took me to his house. And I told the imam, I want to be a Muslim. And he was shocked, he was like, what? I said, yep, this book is what you say it is. It is what you say it is. That's enough for me. He said, so you believe there's only one God, and he's the only one that should be worshipped? I said, I've always believed that. I've just never seen it like this. He said, but I have to tell you a little bit about Muhammad, because the second part, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the second part of the shahada is to believe in Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I said, there's only one thing you need to tell me about Muhammad. He said, what? I said, did he give us this book? He said, yes. I said, then he's a prophet. This is his evidence. I said, because God is perfect, this book is perfect. Therefore, whoever it came through, they're perfect. So I said, Muhammad Rasulullah. So that day, the December of 1998, I accepted Islam. I said that this is it. This is my way of life. And I know I've kept you forever, but I want to spend 5 minutes telling you why I tell my story. Because if I do it just for entertainment, then wallahi, I could have stayed at home. I could have saved myself 15 hours on a plane. Seriously, you could have put it on the screen and watched it on YouTube. It's probably better than live. The reason I tell my story is because I don't want to see anyone else struggle for the truth the way I had to struggle for the truth. I don't want to see anyone else have to go through what I went through. And there are so many people in the world that are where I was in 1998. They're lost, and they want to know the right way. But they want to know it with truth and proof and evidence. And there's so many people in Australia like that. I know, and I've never been here. There's so many people in Sydney just like that. I know, and I've never been here. There's so many people in your neighborhood just like that.